Before we dive into the depths of Reddit's darkest unsolved mysteries, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. These stories will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about reality, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Some mysteries are never meant to be solved. Some questions are never meant to be answered, and some threads on Reddit, once posted, vanish into the digital void, leaving only unanswered questions and sleepless nights in their wake. Tonight, we're descending into the most disturbing, the most unsettling, the most absolutely terrifying Reddit threads that have never received closure. These aren't creepypastas. These aren't fictional horror stories written for entertainment. These are real accounts from real people who experienced something they cannot explain, something that defies logic, something that continues to haunt them to this very day. The internet remembers everything, or so they say. But what happens when the internet itself cannot provide answers? What happens when thousands of users, investigators, and armchair detectives cannot crack a case? What happens when reality itself seems to bend and break, leaving only fragments of truth scattered across anonymous forums? Tonight, you'll hear stories that will make you check your locks twice. Stories that will make you question whether you're truly alone in your home. Stories that will burrow into your mind and refuse to let go. And the most terrifying part? None of these stories have endings. None of these mysteries have been solved. The original posters, in many cases, simply disappeared, leaving their questions hanging in the digital ether like ghosts waiting for recognition. Let me take you back to 7 years ago, to a small apartment where reality began to unravel for one unsuspecting person. Objects in their house kept disappearing. At first, it seemed like simple forgetfulness, the kind of thing that happens to everyone. You put your keys down somewhere. You forget where you placed your phone. Normal, everyday occurrences that we all experience. But this was different. This was systematic. This was deliberate. And this was absolutely terrifying. The poster, who we'll call Alex for privacy, detailed a disturbing pattern that had been developing over 2 weeks. An anti-mosquito device vanished from its usual spot. Gone. Completely gone. Alex searched everywhere, tore the apartment apart looking for it, but it was nowhere to be found. Eventually, they gave up and bought a new one. The very next day, they found the original device wedged behind their bedroom cupboard, pushed deep into a space so narrow and inaccessible that retrieving it seemed almost impossible. How did it get there? Who put it there? And more importantly, why? Then came the neck pillow, a travel pillow that Alex used religiously whenever they went on trips. It disappeared, just like the device. Days passed. The pillow was gone. And then, in that same impossible space behind the cupboard, there it was, crammed into a gap so tight that even reaching it required tools and effort. Alex shared a photograph of the location. The space was maybe 2 inches wide, far from any normal living area, tucked behind furniture in a way that made accidental placement completely impossible. Pause for a moment and imagine this. Imagine waking up one day and finding your belongings hidden in places you could never reach, in places you would never think to look. Imagine the creeping sensation that someone or something has been in your home while you slept, moving through your space, touching your things, watching you. Alex did what any rational person would do in this situation. They installed security cameras, not professional equipment, mind you, just an old smartphone running an app called Alfred that turns devices into motion-activated cameras. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just something to catch whoever was doing this. Something to provide answers. Something to restore sanity to a situation that was rapidly spiraling out of control. The cameras were positioned in the living room and bedroom. Alex went to sleep that night, hoping, praying for answers. And then, in the dead of night, they were woken by a sound. A loud thud. Something heavy hitting the floor. Alex bolted upright, heart pounding, and rushed through the apartment. Nothing. No broken objects, no intruders, no explanation, just silence and darkness and the overwhelming sense that something was fundamentally wrong. The next morning, Alex checked the camera footage. The app had recorded 3 motion-activated events during the night, 3 photographs captured by the camera's low light mode. Alex opened the first image. It showed the living room, dark and grainy, the way security footage always looks at night. The couch, the flower vase, the wall. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place, just a normal apartment at night. The second image showed the same scene, but with slightly different lighting. The shadows had shifted. The angle had changed ever so slightly. And still, nothing concrete, nothing definitive, nothing that could explain what was happening. And then came the third image, the one that changed everything, the one that sent shivers down Alex's spine and made them question their own sanity. In this image, something appeared in front of the camera. Close, very close. It looked like a hand, fingers, a wrist, something reaching toward the lens, partially obscuring the view. The image was blurry, distorted by the low light and compression, but the shape was unmistakable. That was a human hand. Alex posted these images to Reddit, desperate for answers, desperate for someone to tell them they were overreacting, that this was just a technical glitch or a trick of the light. The response was immediate. Thousands of users flooded the thread with theories, suggestions, and increasingly disturbing observations. Some suggested carbon monoxide poisoning, a silent killer that can cause hallucinations, memory loss, and bizarre behavior. The idea was that Alex was moving these objects themselves in a fugue state, with no memory of doing so. It's a terrifying thought that your own mind could betray you so completely. Others suggested a break-in, someone living in the walls or attic, a modern-day case of frogging where an intruder secretly inhabits someone's home. But the apartment was small. There was nowhere to hide, no attic, no basement, no secret spaces where someone could live undetected. And the cameras, despite capturing that mysterious hand, never showed a full person, never captured anyone entering or leaving. The thread exploded. Thousands of comments poured in. People analyzed the images pixel by pixel, zooming in, adjusting contrast, searching for any detail that might provide clarity. And then, after days of frantic speculation and growing paranoia, Alex disappeared. They promised to post updates, promised to share more footage, promised to install a carbon monoxide detector and investigate further. And then, nothing. Radio silence. The account went dark. No more posts, no more comments, no more updates. To this day, 7 years later, we still don't know what happened to Alex. We don't know if they solved the mystery. We don't know if they moved out. We don't know if they're even safe. The thread remains open, frozen in time, a digital monument to an unsolved mystery that continues to haunt everyone who reads it. Because the most terrifying mysteries aren't the ones that get solved in dramatic fashion. They're the ones that simply stop, leaving us forever wondering what became of the person who asked for help. Now, before we continue deeper into these unsolved nightmares, if you're finding this content as gripping as I am, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. These stories deserve to be heard, and your support helps ensure we can continue bringing you the most disturbing true stories the internet has to offer. Let's move to another case, another person, another home where something inexplicable occurred. Imagine living with friends, people you trust, people you've known for years. You decide to move in together, split the rent, make life easier for everyone involved. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter. It's supposed to be safe. But for one group of young men who posted on Reddit, their new home became the stage for events so disturbing, so impossible to explain, that even police couldn't provide answers. It started innocuously enough. A few weeks into living in their rental house together, one of the roommates came home early from work. He walked up to the front door and froze. There, on the doorstep, was an organ. Not a musical instrument, a biological organ. Tissue, flesh, something that had once been inside a living creature. It sat there, exposed to the elements, placed deliberately where it couldn't be missed. The roommate immediately called his friends, thinking it was a prank. But the others were all at work. They FaceTimed to confirm, and sure enough, there it was. A liver, or something that looked remarkably like a liver, sitting on their doorstep like a grotesque welcome mat. They reported it to the police. The police took a report, examined the organ, and essentially told them it was probably kids playing a prank. After all, Halloween was approaching, and teenagers do stupid things for shock value. The organ was removed. Life returned to normal. The incident was written off as a one-time occurrence, albeit a disturbing one. Weeks passed. The roommates forgot about the organ. Then came the night. They were all home together, watching a boxing match in the basement, drinking beer, enjoying a quiet evening. They decided to go outside and start a fire in the backyard. They walked out into the cool night air, approached the fire pit, and stopped dead in their tracks. More organs, multiple organs, scattered around their backyard like some kind of ritualistic offering. Hearts, livers, kidneys, all fresh, all intact, all placed deliberately around their property. The sheer volume of biological material was staggering. This wasn't a prank anymore. This was something else entirely. Something calculated. Something wrong. They called the police again. The police came, took photographs, collected the organs, and ran tests. The results? Inconclusive. The organs were from animals, likely from a butcher shop or slaughterhouse, but there was no way to determine who had placed them or why. No fingerprints, no DNA, no security footage, nothing. Just organs appearing on their property with no explanation and no clear motive. The roommates installed security cameras immediately. Ring doorbells, motion sensors, floodlights, everything they could think of to catch whoever was doing this. And then the activity stopped. Completely. No more organs, no more disturbances, just silence. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. One of their neighbors reached out after seeing the security cameras go up. This neighbor lived a few houses down. He told the roommates that he had experienced the same thing, organs appearing in his fenced-off dog pen. At first, just like the roommates, he thought it was a Halloween prank, but then it happened again and again. Always the same. Always organs. Always placed deliberately where they couldn't be missed. He showed them photographs, intact hearts, complete livers, placed carefully on the ground as if displayed for maximum effect. The neighbor had also installed cameras, and just like the roommates, once the cameras went up, the activity ceased. Whoever was doing this knew they were being watched. Whoever was doing this was aware enough to stop before getting caught, which raises terrifying questions. Was this person surveilling these properties? Were they watching to see when cameras were installed? How did they know? And most importantly, why these specific houses? What connected these victims? The original poster shared the photographs from their neighbor. The images were disturbing. The organs looked fresh, not decomposed or damaged by animals. They appeared to have been carefully placed, not dropped or thrown, and the quantity suggested access to a significant supply of biological material. Was this someone who worked in meat processing, a veterinary professional, a medical student, or something darker? The Reddit thread exploded with theories. Some suggested it was cult activity, ritual offerings to some unknown entity. Others thought it might be a warning, a message from someone with a grudge against the neighborhood. Some even suggested it could be the work of a serial killer, someone practicing or sending a message or marking territory. But without more information, without more evidence, without the original poster providing updates, all we have are questions. And once again, like so many of these cases, the poster disappeared. 5 years have passed since that thread was created. No updates, no resolution, no arrests. Just a neighborhood somewhere in America where organs appeared on doorsteps and in backyards. And then, as mysteriously as it began, it stopped. The question remains, who was doing this? And more terrifyingly, are they still out there? We're going to take a brief moment here because I want you to do something. Look around your room right now. Look at your doors. Look at your windows. Do you feel safe? Do you feel certain that you're alone? Because after you hear the next story, you might never feel quite the same way again. And if these stories are keeping you engaged, keeping you on the edge of your seat, do me a solid and drop a like on this video. It helps more than you know. Technology was supposed to make us safer. Smart home devices, voice assistants, security systems, all designed to give us control and peace of mind. But what happens when these devices betray us? What happens when the technology meant to protect us becomes the source of our terror? A woman, who I'll call Sarah, posted on Reddit about an experience that shattered her sense of security forever. Sarah had been the victim of a violent crime years earlier. Without going into graphic detail, she had been assaulted by someone she knew, someone who became obsessed with her. The man was never prosecuted, never punished, and after the assault, he began stalking her online. New accounts, fake profiles, messages that appeared from nowhere. She blocked him repeatedly, changed her passwords, reported him to police. But the messages kept coming. For months, for years, a constant reminder that she was being watched, being pursued, being hunted. Then, the messages stopped. For weeks, nothing. Sarah allowed herself to hope that he had finally given up, finally moved on, finally left her alone. She'd tried to rebuild her life, tried to feel safe again. She installed a smart speaker and Amazon Alexa for convenience, music, weather updates, the simple comforts of modern technology. One evening, Sarah was alone in her apartment. She was in her bedroom when she heard it. A voice, coming from her living room, coming from her Alexa. At first, she thought it was a glitch, an accidental activation. Alexa sometimes responds to sounds that resemble the wake word, but this was different. This wasn't a response to a command. This was a message, and the voice that came through the speaker made her blood run cold. The voice said her name, her full name, and then it laughed. A low, menacing laugh that echoed through her empty apartment. Sarah ran to the living room and unplugged the device immediately. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She stood there in her living room, staring at the now silent speaker, trying to process what had just happened. She checked the Alexa app on her phone, looking at the device history. According to the app, nothing had been triggered. No commands had been given. No sounds had been recorded. The device showed no activity at all during the time she heard the voice, but she had heard it. She knew she had heard it, and it had said her name. Sarah dug deeper into the app settings and discovered something that made her stomach drop. The devices connected to her Amazon account showed 4 items: the app itself, an Echo Dot that she had bought for her mother years ago, but which had never been set up, her Fire Stick, and a second Fire Stick. Sarah only owned 1 Fire Stick. There was a second device connected to her account that she didn't recognize, a device that showed as online, a device that had access to her account, her information, her smart home system. Someone had gained access to her Amazon account. Someone had connected their own device. Someone could see what she was watching, what she was listening to, where she was. And someone had used that access to send her a message through her own smart speaker. Sarah immediately changed all her passwords, called Amazon support, and reported the unauthorized device. Amazon launched an investigation, escalating the case to their security team. But that process takes time, days, weeks. And during that time, Sarah was left with the horrifying knowledge that someone was inside her digital life. She posted on Reddit, asking for help, asking for advice, asking if anyone else had experienced something similar. The responses were overwhelming. People suggested she contact the FBI, that this was cyberstalking and harassment. Others told her to document everything, to save all evidence, to prepare for legal action. Tech-savvy users explained how someone could have hacked her account, how two-factor authentication could be bypassed, how devices could be spoofed. But here's what makes this story even more disturbing. Sarah never posted a resolution. She promised to update once Amazon completed their investigation. She promised to share what the police said. She promised to let everyone know if she was safe. And then, like so many others, she vanished. The account went silent. No more posts, no more comments, no more updates. Just a thread full of concerned strangers waiting for news that never came. Did Amazon find the hacker? Did police track down her stalker? Is Sarah safe? We don't know. We'll never know. And that uncertainty is what makes this story so deeply unsettling. Because somewhere out there, right now, Sarah might still be dealing with this. Or worse, something might have happened that prevented her from ever posting again. Think about your own devices right now. Your phone, your computer, your smart speaker, your security cameras? Do you know for certain that you're the only one with access? Do you know for certain that no one else is watching? The truth is, most of us don't. We trust the technology. We trust the companies. We trust that our passwords are strong enough. But Sarah trusted those things too. And look what happened to her. Let me hit you with another case, one that's even more bizarre, even more inexplicable, even more absolutely terrifying in its implications. A man, I'll call him David, woke up one morning with no memory of the night before. Complete blackout, total amnesia. He checked his phone and felt his heart sink. Transaction after transaction. Thousands of pounds withdrawn from his bank account. Currency exchanges, bar purchases, hotel charges, all time-stamped between midnight and 6 in the morning. All from locations across the city. All made while David had no memory of where he was or what he was doing. David immediately assumed he'd been drugged. Rohypnol, GHB. Something slipped into his drink at a bar. It happens. It's terrifying, but it happens. He reported the transactions to his bank, expecting them to flag the purchases as fraudulent, to refund his money, to investigate. Instead, the bank told him that all transactions appeared legitimate. They were made with his card. They were made with his phone, using Apple Pay. They were made with correct PIN entries. From the bank's perspective, David had simply gone on a spending spree and now regretted it. But David knew something was wrong. He had no memory of that night. None, not even fragments or flashes. Complete darkness. He went to the police. They took a report but were skeptical. No signs of physical harm. No witnesses to him being drugged. No proof of criminal activity beyond his own statement that he couldn't remember. They told him they'd look into it, but their tone suggested they thought he was just trying to get out of debt. David refused to give up. He started investigating himself. He looked at the transactions, mapped out the locations, tried to piece together a timeline. He visited the currency exchange where over 3,000 pounds had been converted. They remembered the transaction, but couldn't identify who had made it. The security footage was inconclusive. The person in the footage kept their face obscured, head down, hoodie up, professional, deliberate. Then David discovered something that changed everything. When he requested all data held by his bank, he found a record he'd never seen before. His bank account details had been added to an Apple Pay account on a device labeled Jacob's iPhone. David had never owned an iPhone. David didn't know anyone named Jacob. Someone had cloned his card details, his phone access, his PIN code, everything, and added it to a completely different device without him knowing. This meant that whoever drugged David hadn't just stolen his physical cards. They had somehow extracted all his financial information, his phone passcodes, his security details, in the brief window when he was incapacitated. And then they had gone on a calculated spending spree, carefully staying under transaction limits that would require ID verification, carefully avoiding high-security cameras, carefully covering their tracks at every turn. David posted his story on Reddit, looking for others who might have experienced similar crimes, looking for advice on how to proceed, looking for validation that he wasn't crazy. The responses were mixed. Some people believed him completely, sharing their own stories of being drugged and robbed. Others were skeptical, suggesting he was simply blackout drunk and had made poor decisions. But the detail about Jacob's iPhone was damning evidence that something criminal had occurred. David continued investigating. He visited the hotel where a charge appeared on his statement. The hotel clerk was helpful and revealed something chilling. The room had been booked in advance, days before the night in question. Someone had planned this. Someone had reserved a room, knowing they would need it, knowing they would be bringing someone there, knowing they would need a place to hold their victim while they extracted information and drained accounts. The bank continued to deny David's claims. They closed his accounts, citing their right to do so without explanation. They refused to refund the stolen money. They essentially accused him of fraud. David filed complaints with the financial ombudsman, submitted all his evidence, and waited. The police were still not helping. They hadn't reviewed the CCTV footage from the various locations. They hadn't contacted the hotel. They hadn't done anything substantial to investigate. And then David's update stopped. He posted several times over weeks, each update more frustrated than the last. He was fighting the bank, fighting the police, fighting to prove that he was a victim and not a criminal. And then silence. No resolution, no final update, no closure. Did the ombudsman rule in his favor? Did he ever recover his money? Did police ever catch the people responsible? We don't know. Another unsolved mystery, another victim left without answers, another thread that ends in uncertainty and fear. The implication here is staggering. David's case suggests the existence of organized criminals who have perfected a technique: drug the victim, extract all their financial information while they're incapacitated, and then systematically drain their accounts while avoiding detection. If they did this to David, how many others have they done it to? How many people woke up with no memory and empty accounts and were simply told by authorities that they had been irresponsible? Right now, I want you to pause and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. These stories matter. These unsolved mysteries need to be shared, and your subscription helps ensure that we can continue investigating, continue sharing, continue giving voice to victims who were never heard. Let's talk about something that might hit even closer to home for some of you. The idea of a stranger, not online, not digital, but physical, real, standing outside your house, watching you through your windows, and refusing to leave no matter what you say or do. A homeowner, who I'll call Marcus, posted about an experience that started as uncomfortable and quickly escalated into nightmare territory. Marcus had just bought his first house, a huge milestone, a dream come true. Everything seemed perfect for the first few weeks. And then, one Tuesday morning, as Marcus was backing his car out of the garage, he noticed someone, a man, leaning against a Toyota Camry parked on the street, just standing there, staring. Marcus rolled down his window and called out, asking if the man needed help. The man responded with an unsettling calmness. "No, sir. Have a good day." But he didn't leave. He just kept staring. Marcus asked him politely to leave the property. The man didn't respond. He stood there, locked in eye contact with Marcus for 30 full seconds, not moving, not speaking, just staring with an intensity that made Marcus's skin crawl. Marcus started to get out of his car to confront the man directly. The moment Marcus reached for his door handle, the man snapped into motion. He got into his Camry and drove away without another word. Marcus immediately called in sick to work and phoned the police. The police suggested he was being scouted for a burglary, a common tactic where criminals watch houses to determine schedules and security. Marcus had his brother-in-law come stay with his wife for safety, and he invested in a Ring camera system. Days passed without incident. Marcus started to relax, thinking the man had moved on. Then, during a Sunday football game, Marcus was watching television when movement caught his eye. He looked toward his front window. The same man was there, peeking through the glass, looking directly at Marcus. And then the man started laughing, a genuine, delighted laugh, as if this were all a game, as if Marcus's fear was entertainment. Marcus grabbed his gun and rushed to the window, but by the time he got there, the man was gone. Vanished. Marcus immediately called the police and handed over the Ring footage. The police took the evidence and said they would try to track the man down. Marcus and his wife, understandably terrified, decided to stay with family until the situation was resolved. That night, at 2 a.m, Marcus received a phone call. Unknown number. He answered. The voice on the other end asked a simple question. "Are you home?" Marcus hung up immediately. The next day, he filed for a protective order. He gave police all the evidence. He did everything right, everything by the book, everything a victim is supposed to do. And then, Marcus stopped posting. No updates, no resolution, no information about whether the man was ever caught or identified. The thread remains open, full of concerned comments and suggestions from strangers who will never know what happened. Did police catch the stalker? Did Marcus move to a different house? Is his family safe? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, tormenting everyone who reads the thread and wonders what they would do in the same situation. What makes this case particularly disturbing is the deliberate nature of the man's actions. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't subtle. He was openly watching, openly stalking, openly tormenting Marcus and his family. And that laugh through the window, suggests someone who enjoys the fear they create, someone who sees this as fun, as thrilling, as empowering. That's not normal criminal behavior. That's something darker. You know what the worst part of all these stories is? The silence, the not knowing. The threads that just end without resolution, leaving thousands of readers forever wondering what happened. Did these people get help? Did they escape? Are they still dealing with these situations, or did something worse happen that prevented them from ever updating? The internet is supposed to be forever. Information is supposed to persist. But what we've learned tonight is that some questions remain unanswered, not because the information doesn't exist, but because the people who could provide answers have vanished. And in that vanishing, in that silence, the horror grows. Because we're left to imagine the worst. We're left to fill in the blanks with our darkest fears. And those fears are often more terrifying than any truth could ever be. Before we wrap up, let me share one final case, perhaps the most psychologically disturbing of all. A man posted on Reddit about his girlfriend. They'd been together for 5 years, planning to move in together. She owned a beautiful Victorian house, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, in a neighborhood that had gentrified over the years. He'd been staying there more frequently, practically living there already. And then one day, he noticed something odd. A room on the 2nd floor had a padlock on the outside. Not a regular door lock, but a heavy-duty padlock. the kind you'd use on a storage unit or shed. He asked his girlfriend about it casually. She shrugged and said she didn't really use that room, that it just had stuff in it. He asked if they could open it so he could potentially use it as a home office when he moved in. She said no, flat out refused, wouldn't discuss it further. The conversation ended there, but the question lingered in his mind. As time went on, the locked room became an obsession, not because he was suspicious of infidelity or worried about something dangerous, simply because it didn't make sense. Why would you padlock a room in your own house? What could possibly be in there that requires that level of security? He asked again. She deflected. He brought it up in different ways, trying to approach the topic gently. She shut down every conversation. The man posted on Reddit asking if he was being unreasonable. He felt guilty for being so curious, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The responses were split. Some people said he should respect her privacy, that everyone is entitled to secrets, that pushing the issue would damage the relationship. Others said that if he was moving into the house, paying bills, living there permanently, he had a right to know what was in every room. Some Redditors suggested possibilities. A hoarder room, something she was embarrassed about. A shrine to a deceased loved one or past relationship. A collection of something personal or private. Maybe even just a messy storage space she didn't want him to see. All reasonable explanations, all understandable. But the padlock bothered people. Why a padlock specifically? Why not just a regular lock? Why so heavy-duty? The original poster said he wouldn't snoop, that he respected her privacy, but that the mystery was eating away at him. And here's where the story gets interesting. He never updated. The thread is full of people begging for updates, pleading to know what he decided to do, asking if he ever found out what was in the room. But the poster never returned. The account went silent, which leaves us with questions that will never be answered. Did he drop the subject and move in anyway? Did he press the issue and discover something that ended the relationship? Did he snoop while she was gone and find something he wished he hadn't? Or did he discover something so disturbing that he couldn't bring himself to post about it publicly? The locked room has become something of a legend in Reddit mystery circles. People reference it. People speculate. People create elaborate theories about what might have been behind that padlocked door. But without the original poster returning, we'll never know the truth. And that uncertainty transforms a simple question about a locked room into something far more sinister in our imaginations. Think about it. What could be in that room that would require a padlock? What could be so secret, so private, so important that someone would refuse to share it even with their partner of 5 years? The reasonable explanations don't quite fit. If it was just embarrassing clutter or personal memorabilia, why not just say that? Why be so defensive and mysterious? The padlock suggests something more. Something that needs to be secured, something that can't be allowed to escape, or something that can't be allowed to be seen. And with that deeply unsettling thought, we've reached the end of our journey through Reddit's most disturbing, unsolved mysteries. Stories of objects moving on their own, organs appearing on doorsteps, smart devices being hacked by stalkers, people being drugged and robbed with no memory, strangers watching through windows, and locked rooms that will never be opened. These aren't just stories. These are real experiences from real people who reached out to the internet for help and never got the answers they deserved. The internet is supposed to connect us. It's supposed to provide solutions and support and community. But sometimes, all it provides is a record of our questions, a digital echo of our fear, a permanent marker of the moment we asked for help and received only silence in return. I want you to think about your own life right now. Is there something you can't explain? Something odd that happened that you've dismissed as coincidence or imagination? Maybe it's time to trust your instincts. Maybe it's time to investigate. Or maybe, just maybe, it's better not to know. Because as we've seen tonight, sometimes the search for answers leads only to more questions. Darker questions. Questions that keep you awake at night, wondering if you're truly safe in your own home. If you've made it this far, you're the real MVP. Please, and I mean please, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment below telling me which story disturbed you the most. And if you have your own unexplained experience, your own Reddit mystery, share it. Maybe someone out there has answers. Maybe someone out there experienced the same thing. Or maybe your story will become the next unsolved mystery that keeps thousands of people awake at night, wondering what really happened. These stories need to be told. These voices need to be heard. And these mysteries, even if they never get solved, deserve to be remembered. Because somewhere out there, the people who posted these threads are still living with these experiences, still wondering, still afraid, still looking for answers that may never come. Until next time, stay safe, stay skeptical, and remember, not every question deserves an answer. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors are better left locked, and some threads are better left unread. But now that you've heard these stories, you'll never be able to forget them. They'll stay with you, just like they've stayed with me, waiting, watching, wondering, what really happened? And could it happen to you? Thank you for watching, for listening, for staying until the end. This has been a deep dive into the darkest corners of Reddit, where questions outnumber answers and fear is the only constant. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. And whatever you do, don't forget to check your locks tonight. You never know who might be watching. You never know what might be moving in the darkness. And you never know when your own experience might become the next unsolved Reddit mystery that haunts the internet forever. Stay safe out there. And remember, some things are better left unknown. But before you go, before you close this video and try to forget what you've heard, let me share something that ties all these stories together. Something that makes them even more disturbing than they already are. Every single one of these cases involves a moment of disbelief. A moment where the victim thought they must be overreacting, must be imagining things, must be paranoid. Alex dismissed the first disappearing object as forgetfulness. The roommates thought the first organ was a Halloween prank. Sarah initially thought her Alexa glitched. David assumed he just had too much to drink. Marcus thought the stranger was just lost. And the man with a girlfriend thought he was being unreasonable for being curious about a locked door. That moment of self-doubt, that instant where we gaslight ourselves into thinking we're overreacting, is exactly what these situations exploit. We're so conditioned to be rational, to find logical explanations, to avoid seeming paranoid or dramatic, that we ignore our instincts. And those instincts, those primal gut feelings that something is wrong, exist for a reason. They've kept humans alive for thousands of years. But we've become so civilized, so rational, so skeptical of our own fear, that we've learned to ignore them. Think about Alex with the disappearing objects. If Alex had trusted that initial feeling of unease, if Alex had immediately installed cameras after the first incident, would the situation have been resolved faster? Would we have gotten clearer footage? Would Alex have caught whoever was doing this before they got close enough to reach the camera? Think about the roommates with the organs. If they had taken the first organ more seriously, if they had installed cameras immediately instead of waiting weeks, would they have caught the person responsible? Would they have been able to provide police with footage that actually showed a face, a license plate, something actionable? Think about Sarah with the hacked Alexa. If she had checked her connected devices immediately when the stalking messages started, would she have discovered the unauthorized Fire Stick sooner? Would she have been able to prevent her stalker from gaining access to her smart home system? The pattern is clear. These situations escalate because victims second-guess themselves. Because society has taught us that being cautious is paranoid, that being vigilant is overreacting, that being afraid is weakness. We're told to calm down, to not worry so much, to stop being so dramatic. And sometimes that advice is correct. Sometimes we are overreacting. Sometimes there is a logical explanation. But sometimes that instinct is right, and ignoring it can have consequences we never anticipated. Let me tell you about another case, one that illustrates this point perfectly. A woman who I'll call Jennifer posted on Reddit about a series of small, strange incidents in her apartment. Nothing dramatic, nothing obviously criminal, just little things that felt off. Her apartment building had a security system that required key fob entry. One morning, she found her apartment door slightly ajar when she woke up. Not wide open, just barely open, like someone had closed it, but it hadn't latched properly. She checked her door multiple times every night before bed, a habit from living in the city. She knew she had closed it. She knew she had locked it, but she told herself she must have been tired. Maybe she'd forgotten this one time. Maybe the latch was faulty. She made a note to tell the landlord, but didn't think much more about it. A few days later, she noticed that items in her apartment had been moved. Subtle movements. A book on her coffee table that was now on the kitchen counter. A pair of shoes by the door that were now in her bedroom. A coffee mug on the counter that she didn't remember using. Again, she dismissed it. She lived alone, but worked long hours. Maybe she'd moved these things and forgotten. Maybe she was more tired than she realized. Maybe she needed to get more sleep. The human mind is capable of amazing rationalization when it wants to avoid accepting a frightening truth. But then came the incident that she couldn't explain away. Jennifer came home from work one evening and immediately felt that something was wrong. The air in her apartment felt different. She couldn't explain it. Couldn't articulate what had changed, but something was off. She walked through her space slowly, looking for anything out of place. And then she found it. In her bedroom, on her pillow, was a photograph. Not a photograph she owned. A photograph of herself, taken through her bedroom window from outside at night. In the photograph, Jennifer was asleep in her bed. The angle was from ground level, looking up at her window, which was on the 3rd floor. Someone had climbed up or found a vantage point across from her building and photographed her while she slept. And then that person had entered her apartment while she was at work and placed the photograph on her pillow. A message, a demonstration of power, a statement that said, "I can see you, I can reach you, you are not safe." Jennifer called the police immediately. They took a report, but told her that without additional evidence of who had taken the photo or how they'd entered, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested she install cameras, change her locks, and be vigilant. She did all of those things. She also posted on Reddit asking for advice, asking if she should move, asking what else she could do to feel safe. The responses were supportive, but ultimately unhelpful. People suggested she install motion sensors, get a dog, sleep with a weapon nearby. Someone suggested she dust for fingerprints on the photograph. Another person recommended she hire a private investigator. But the most common piece of advice was, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Jennifer posted a few updates over the following weeks. She'd changed her locks. She'd installed multiple cameras. She'd reported the incident to her landlord and building management. She was considering moving, but couldn't afford to break her lease. And then, like so many others, she stopped posting. No final update, no resolution, just silence. Did Jennifer move out? Did the stalker return? Was she safe? We'll never know. Another story without an ending. Another victim without closure. Another mystery that joins the countless others haunting Reddit's digital archives. But here's what makes Jennifer's case so important to our discussion. Every warning sign was there. The door left ajar. The moved objects. The feeling that something was wrong. If Jennifer had trusted those initial instincts, if she had immediately installed cameras after the first incident, would she have caught the stalker earlier? Would she have had evidence to show police before the situation escalated to the photograph? We'll never know. But the pattern is clear. Our culture dismisses these instincts. We call people paranoid. We tell them they're overreacting. We gaslight victims into believing their own fear is irrational. And sometimes, tragically, that costs people their safety, their peace of mind, or worse. The Gift of Fear, a book by Gavin de Becker, discusses this extensively. De Becker, a security specialist who has protected numerous high-profile clients, argues that humans have sophisticated threat detection systems built into our psychology. That feeling of unease when something is wrong, that's not paranoia. That's your subconscious processing thousands of microsignals that your conscious mind hasn't caught up with yet. When you feel uncomfortable around someone but can't explain why, your brain has likely detected subtle body language, tone patterns, or behavioral inconsistencies that signal danger. When you feel like you're being watched, your peripheral vision has likely detected movement or presence that your conscious attention hasn't focused on. When something feels off in your home, you've likely subconsciously noticed small changes that indicate someone has been there. These instincts exist for a reason. And the stories we've discussed tonight are perfect examples of what happens when those instincts are ignored. Every single victim in these stories had moments where they felt something was wrong. And every single victim initially dismissed those feelings as irrational or paranoid. By the time they trusted their instincts enough to take action, the situations had already escalated. Now, I'm not suggesting we should all become paranoid shut-ins who see threats in every shadow. That's not healthy either. But there's a balance. There's a middle ground between reckless dismissal of danger signals and debilitating paranoia. That middle ground is cautious awareness. It's trusting your instincts enough to investigate further while remaining rational enough to seek evidence and explanation. If objects are moving in your home, install cameras. Not because you're paranoid, but because you want evidence either way. Either you'll discover there's a logical explanation, or you'll catch whatever is actually happening. Either outcome gives you information and resolves the uncertainty. If someone makes you uncomfortable, create distance. You don't need to justify your discomfort to anyone. Your safety is more valuable than potentially hurting someone's feelings. If technology behaves strangely, check your security settings. It takes 5 minutes and could reveal a serious privacy breach. These aren't paranoid responses. These are reasonable precautions. And yet, our culture has become so focused on avoiding offense, on being polite, on not causing drama, that we've lost touch with basic self-preservation instincts. We'd rather risk our safety than risk seeming rude. We'd rather dismiss our fear than accept that danger might be real. The victims in tonight's stories learned this lesson the hard way, and they tried to share that lesson by posting their experiences online. They wanted to warn others. They wanted to validate others who might be experiencing similar situations. They wanted to create a record that said, "This happened to me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. It was real." And then they disappeared. Which raises another terrifying question. Did they disappear by choice, or did someone make them disappear? Did they decide to stop updating because the situation was resolved, or because continuing to share their story became dangerous? Did they move on with their lives, or did their lives move on without them? We'll never know. That's the curse of anonymous internet forums. The same anonymity that allows people to share their darkest experiences without judgment also means we have no way to verify outcomes, no way to follow up, no way to know if the person who asked for help ever received it. These stories exist in a liminal space between reality and fiction, between documentary and legend, between testimony and myth. And maybe that's fitting. Maybe these unsolved mysteries deserve to remain unsolved. Maybe the horror isn't in the resolution, but in the not knowing. Maybe the true terror of these stories isn't what happened, but what might still be happening. Because unlike a horror movie with a defined ending, unlike a true crime case with a verdict, these stories continue. Somewhere out there, right now, these situations might still be unfolding. The stalker might still be stalking. The hacker might still be hacking. The stalker might still be watching. The mysterious organ placer might still be leaving their gruesome calling cards. And somewhere out there, right now, someone might be experiencing something similar. Someone might be reading this and thinking, "That sounds like what's happening to me." Someone might be validating their own fear through these stories. Someone might be realizing that their instincts were right, that they're not crazy, that something really is wrong. If that person is you, if you're experiencing something you can't explain, something that frightens you, something that everyone tells you is nothing, but you know deep down is something, then listen to this carefully. Trust yourself. Document everything. Install cameras. Change your locks. Tell people you trust. Report to authorities, even if you think they won't take it seriously. Create a paper trail, because the worst thing that can happen if you're wrong is that you feel a bit silly. But the worst thing that can happen if you're right and you do nothing is something far more terrible. These Reddit threads exist as warnings. They exist as validation for people who feel alone in their fear. They exist as proof that strange, unexplainable things do happen to real people in the real world. And they exist as reminders that not every story has a happy ending, not every mystery gets solved, and not every cry for help receives an answer. As we close out this video, I want to acknowledge something important. Some of you watching right now might be scared, genuinely frightened by these stories. That's normal. That's human. These stories are designed to tap into primal fears about safety, about home invasion, about loss of control. If you're feeling anxious or paranoid after watching this, that's an understandable response, but I don't want to leave you in that state. So let me offer some perspective. Yes, these things happen to real people, but they are statistically rare. Millions of people live their entire lives without experiencing anything remotely like these stories. The reason these stories are remarkable, the reason they went viral on Reddit, the reason we're discussing them now, is precisely because they're unusual. They're outliers. They're the exception, not the rule. Most doors left ajar really are because you forgot to close them properly. Most moved objects really are because you moved them and forgot. Most strange noises really are just houses settling or appliances cycling. Most of the time, the simplest explanation really is the correct one. These stories are terrifying because they're the times when that wasn't true. But those times are rare. However, and this is important, rare doesn't mean impossible. Being aware of potential dangers isn't paranoia, it's preparedness. Having working locks, security cameras, carbon monoxide detectors, and emergency contacts isn't paranoid, it's responsible. Trusting your instincts when something feels genuinely wrong isn't paranoid, it's survival instinct. There's a difference between healthy caution and debilitating fear. Find that balance. Be aware without being consumed. And remember, the internet amplifies the unusual. For every horror story posted on Reddit, there are millions of mundane, boring, completely normal experiences that never get shared because they're not interesting. Our perception of danger is skewed by confirmation bias and availability heuristic. We remember the dramatic stories and forget the thousands of uneventful days. Don't let these stories steal your peace of mind. Let them inform your caution without creating your fear. With that said, I want to thank every single person who has stayed until this point. The fact that you've listened to this entire video, that you've engaged with these stories, that you've thought critically about the questions they raise, means something. It means you care about truth, about mystery, about the human experience in all its strange and frightening complexity. These stories matter because they represent real people who experienced real fear. And by listening, by witnessing, by acknowledging their experiences, you've given them something valuable. You've given them an audience, You've ensured their stories didn't disappear into the void. You've validated their fear and their courage in sharing it. So one final time, if you found value in this video, if these stories moved you or frightened you or made you think, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you want more content like this. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts, your theories, your own experiences, and share this video with friends who appreciate true mystery and real horror. The algorithm rewards engagement, and your engagement helps ensure these stories reach more people, helps ensure more victims feel less alone, helps ensure the mysteries continue to be discussed and investigated. And with that, we've reached the true end. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Reddit's darkest unsolved mysteries. Thank you for trusting me to guide you through these disturbing stories. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your courage in confronting these uncomfortable truths. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, stay skeptical, and remember, reality is often stranger and more terrifying than fiction. The difference is, reality doesn't come with an ending. Some chapters remain forever unfinished. Some questions remain forever unanswered. And some mysteries remain forever unsolved. Sleep well tonight, or try to anyway, because now you know you're not always as alone as you think you are. You're not always as safe as you feel. And you're not always going to get answers to the questions that keep you awake at night. But that's what makes life so terrifying and so precious at the same time. The uncertainty, the mystery, the not knowing. Good night, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching. This has been an exploration of the unexplainable, a documentation of the unresolved, a tribute to the missing answers and the missing people who sought them. May you never become one of these stories. May you never have to post your own unsolved mystery on Reddit. And may you always, always trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Because sometimes, just sometimes, you're right to be afraid. Stay safe out there. The world is full of mysteries, and some of them are watching you right now. But before we truly end, let me leave you with one final thought. One final case that encapsulates everything we've discussed tonight. One final mystery that will make you question everything you thought you knew about reality and the limits of human explanation. There's a phenomenon that researchers call high strangeness. It's a term used in paranormal research, ufology, and cryptozoology to describe events that are so bizarre, so inexplicable, so utterly divorced from normal reality that they defy not just explanation, but even categorization. These are the events that don't fit into neat boxes. They're not clearly hauntings. They're not obviously crimes. They're not simple technical glitches or mental health episodes. They're something else entirely. Something that makes you wonder if reality itself has gaps, cracks, places where the normal rules simply don't apply. Every story we've covered tonight contains elements of high strangeness, objects appearing in physically impossible locations, organs placed with apparent intelligence but no clear motive, technology being manipulated in ways that shouldn't be possible, people experiencing time they can't account for, strangers behaving in ways that violate every social norm, but stop just short of overt illegality. These aren't random crimes or simple misunderstandings. They're events that seem almost designed to create maximum psychological disturbance, while remaining just ambiguous enough to avoid definitive explanation. And that ambiguity might be the point. Think about it. If someone wants to drive you slowly insane, what's the most effective method? It's not to do something obviously violent or clearly illegal. That would trigger investigation, protection, resolution. No, the most effective method is to do things that make you question your own perception, to move objects just slightly, to appear and disappear in ways that could be coincidence but feel deliberate, to leave messages that could be interpreted multiple ways, to operate in the gray zone between provable crime and deniable incident. This is what military psychological operations do to enemy combatants. This is what cults do to members they want to control. This is what abusers do to partners they want to dominate. They create an environment where the victim can never be certain what's real, what's imagined, what's accidental, and what's intentional. And in that uncertainty, in that constant state of hypervigilance and doubt, the victim becomes exhausted, isolated, and increasingly unable to trust their own judgment. Now imagine experiencing that, and then going online to ask for help. You post your story on Reddit, and what happens? Half the respondents tell you you're being ridiculous, that you need to calm down, that you're obviously experiencing carbon monoxide poisoning or mental illness. The other half tell you you're in immediate danger, that you need to flee, that you're probably going to be murdered. Both responses are useless. Both responses increase your stress without providing actionable guidance. And both responses make you less likely to seek help in the future because you've learned that sharing your experience just leads to judgment and speculation rather than support and solutions. This is the trap of anonymous internet forums. They provide the illusion of community and support while actually amplifying isolation and confusion. You think you're reaching out for help, but you're really just adding your voice to a chorus of unsolved mysteries, unresolved fears, and unanswered questions. The forum becomes a repository of collective anxiety rather than a source of genuine assistance. And yet, these forums are valuable. Not because they solve problems, but because they document them, because they create a record that says, these things happen, these experiences are real. You are not the only one. That validation, that knowing you're not alone in your fear, is psychologically crucial for people experiencing high strangeness. It doesn't solve the problem, but it prevents the additional trauma of feeling like you're losing your mind. Every story we've covered tonight serves this function. They're warnings, they're validations, they're testaments to the fact that reality is weirder and more frightening than we generally acknowledge. They're proof that sometimes things happen that can't be explained, that sometimes people experience situations that defy logic, that sometimes the simple explanations are wrong, and the truth is something much stranger and more disturbing. But they're also incomplete. They're stories without endings, questions without answers, cries for help that echo into silence. And that incompleteness is what makes them so powerful and so frustrating. We want closure. We want to know what happened. We want to know that the victims are safe, that the mysteries were solved, that justice was served, or at least that there was a logical explanation. But we don't get that. We get silence. And in that silence, our imaginations fill in the blanks with our darkest fears. Maybe that's appropriate. Maybe these stories are mirrors, reflecting back our own anxieties about safety, privacy, sanity, and control. Maybe they're not really about the specific incidents described, but about the universal human experience of feeling vulnerable in a world we don't fully understand. Maybe every person who reads these stories and feels that chill of recognition is processing their own encounters with high strangeness, their own moments of unexplainable unease, their own brushes with something that didn't quite make sense. Or maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe these are just things that happen to people. Strange things, frightening things, unexplainable things. And maybe the lesson is simpler than all this philosophical speculation. Maybe the lesson is just, the world is strange. Stay alert. Trust your instincts. Take precautions. Document everything. And don't expect answers to every question, because some questions don't have answers. At least not answers we can access or understand with our current knowledge and tools. As we truly close out now, I want to express genuine gratitude. Thank you for letting me share these stories with you. Thank you for sitting through the discomfort and fear they evoke. Thank you for thinking critically about them, for engaging with them, for allowing them to affect you. These stories deserve to be told. The people who experienced them deserve to be heard. And by watching until the end, by really listening, you've honored their experiences and validated their fear. Remember everything we've discussed tonight. Remember to check your locks. Remember to trust your instincts. Remember to document strange occurrences. Remember that you're not paranoid for taking precautions. Remember that rare doesn't mean impossible. Remember that sometimes the simplest explanation isn't the right one. Remember that technology can be both tool and weapon. Remember that strangers aren't always what they seem. Remember that your home can be violated without broken windows. Remember that some mysteries don't get solved. And remember that you're not alone, even when you feel most isolated by fear. Thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart, for watching, for listening, for caring about these stories and the people behind them, for being the kind of person who seeks understanding, even in the face of the unexplainable. The world needs more people like you. People who listen, people who think, people who refuse to dismiss others' experiences just because they're uncomfortable or unexplainable. Stay safe, stay curious, stay skeptical but open-minded, and stay vigilant, because the world is full of mysteries. And some of them are watching you right now. Some of them are waiting for you to let your guard down. Some of them are testing your boundaries. And some of them will never be explained, never be solved, never be understood. They'll just be experienced, survived, and if you're lucky, forgotten. But more likely, they'll stay with you forever, like they've stayed with the people who posted these stories, like they've stayed with me, like they'll stay with you now that you've heard them. Good night, sweet dreams, and check your locks one more time before you sleep. You'll thank me later.